Hi, I'm Nikki at Find Me Crafting. One of my favorite things to crochet are hats because they're quick, satisfying projects and everyone needs a warm hat, right? I especially love making kids' hats because you can add fun details like, oh, a cute little teddy bear peeking out of the brim of the hat. And if you're making it for Valentine's Day or just want to say I love you, you can also add the adorable heart. This super cute pattern is also beginner friendly. Come on, I'll show you how. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. So whether you're making the red or the white hat, the pattern is the same. We are going to be making a rectangle, and then once we get it to be the right length, we're going to slip stitch up the sides, and that's going to create our hat shape. So I am making a child's medium-sized hat. Should fit a child about age 5 to about 10. And I am using Hobby Lobby's I Love This yarn in Cranberry. I'm also using an H 5mm hook. And what we need to start with is a chain. I want my hat height to be about between 10 and 11 inches. I'm going to shoot for 11. And for me, that is 41 chains. So I'm going to chain 41 and then stop and measure it. Yes, woo, 11 inches. So now we're on to row 1, which is going to just be a single crochet in each one of the stitches. I'm going to start in the second chain from the hook. So you can see this chain here, that's number 1. Number 2 is right here. I'm just going to go into that loop and pull up another loop, yarn over and pull through. That's a single crochet. So I'm going to go down my chain here and make a total of 40 single crochets, just like that. I should slow it down one more time. So I'm going to go under this loop. I'm going to pull up a loop. Now I've got 2 loops on, yarn over, pull through. That's a single crochet. So I finished row 1, all my single crochets, all 40 single crochets. And now I'm at the end. I'm going to just chain 1, turn my work, and now this is a little bit more interesting. We are going to do more single crochets all the way down this row, but we're going to do them in the back loop only. That's what gives us the cool texture on the front of this hat, is using only the back loops. So if I pull this out, right here in this first one, you can see there are 2 loops, right? This front one here and this back one. I've got like a shadow from my chain. So what you want to do is put your hook in, obviously, and you're just going to go in between the 2, go under the back loop, pull up a loop. Now you have your 2 on, you're going to yarn over and pull through. And we just continue like that. Right here. The back loop only, right there. You pull up a loop, 2 on, yarn over, pull through. And you're going to do that down the whole row. See, here's my back loop. There's a 2. Here's the back one underneath there, and pull through. Now you can see as we're going down row 2, you're getting this front loop that you're not using kind of stands up. It looks really cool, and it's very stretchy as well. It makes a really cool hat. And that's row 2. When you get to the end of this row, you're just going to chain 1 and go back and forth, doing back loop only single crochets until your hat is the right length, the right size rectangle. And for this size hat, I need to go to 18 inches. So for me, that's, I think, 83 rows. And you just keep doing this back loop only single crochet. Okay, so I finished 83 rows, and that for me makes 18 inches. So if you measure it, I'm right about at 18. Doesn't look like it, just a second ago I did. All right, there we go. So about 18 inches. And now I want to close this up. So it's a cylinder, not a cylinder, you know, we're closing it up so it looks more like a hat. So you end on an odd row because that'll help this slip stitch part look more natural. So
my tail is over here, I'm gonna just turn it a little bit, and now I'm gonna fold it so that my first row and my last row are together, just like this. Now you shouldn't have chained at the end. Don't finish off, don't chain. And you're going to slip stitch through both sides of the rectangle. So I've already got one, I've got my loop on here, and I'm going to go through this very tail end here of the first row, and I'm going to yarn over, pull through, that's my first row. There we go. And here's my last row. And now you're just going to go under both sets of both of the loops here in your first stitch, and then under your first row, because that was a chain, you only have like this one piece. It's not a full loop like these because it was a chain when we started. So now we yarn over and we pull through that first row, and now we're going to pull through the second row. And you really just do that all the way down the side, and it will close up the whole hat. So under my loops here on the last row, under my chain stitches here on this first row, yarn over, pull through both and through your loop, and just continue that. And you can cut your yarn, leave yourself just a bit of a tail to weave in, and then we're going to finish it off just by pulling this through like that. So now when you flip it right side out, right here is your seam, and you can tell, like when you stretch it just a little bit, it's practically invisible. You can't even tell where that is. You can feel it with your hand because it's a little bit bumpier on the inside, but it is awesomely hidden. I wanted to mention too that when I weave in my ends, I tend to go across the two from one side to the other a couple times just to make sure that that particular seam is secure. It's definitely not going to come out. You can even knot it if you want, you know, pull it through and then make a knot like this, just so that I know this isn't going to unravel in any way. So once you have it closed, it looks more like this kind of tube. And you can pick either end to make the top of your hat. Doesn't matter which one you pick because they're exactly the same. I cut myself a length of yarn. It might be 22 inches. And I'm going to use my darning needle, my yarn needle. And this is going to be my top. I tend to start here by the seam just so that I have the knotted area in the same place as my seam. I'm going to pull this through until I get to here. I want to leave myself a bit of a tail just to weave in at the end, and I'm going to just knot this in place right here to attach my yarn. If you kept going, if you hadn't cut off your yarn when you did your seam, you could actually use that part too, but I forgot and cut mine off, so look, it works just the same. So now all you're going to do is weave in and out of the top of your hat. So I'm going to go, you can go in or out first, doesn't matter, but I'm going to go in to this first stitch, pull my yarn through, and then I'm going to come out in the next stitch, outside the hat, not toward the center, but out. And then I'm going to go back in, and actually as you go, it's easier just to kind of, you go in and then you come out and then you go in, and after about 3 or 4 stitches, just pull your yarn through instead of pulling it all the way through like that. So you go in and then out and in and out, and now I've gone a couple of stitches. I'm gonna pull it through, and you keep going around until you get back to where you started here, where your tail is, or you know, if you were smart enough to not cut off your end when you were doing your seam, it's where you started there too. Now I'm back around to where I started. Here's my starting end here, and I'm going to pull this. You don't want to pull too tight, you'll break the yarn, but you do want to tighten it. Tighten, 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 tighten. I'm going to tuck this end in. I'll weave that in the inside so it's out of my way right now. So you're going to tighten, 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 and you'll end up with kind of a bit of a hole still. which is totally normal, at least for me. So I'm just going to go under one side and go under the inside edge over here, and I'm just going to pull it and close up this hole a bit, because as you pull, see, it's just going to start closing up. So I'm going to go from one side to the other, and then I'm going to switch and go sort of from the top to the bottom so that you don't have any holes. And when you feel like you've gotten it all closed, then as I'm pulling this loop closed, pulling it tight, I'm going to just slide my needle through the middle, pull through. You can see I have an excessive amount of yarn yet. You do not need as much yarn as I started with, but I don't want to play yarn chicken and lose. So I'm just going to cut myself an extra long length, but you know, you do you. You can actually leave this length of yarn attached right here, and then at the end, you can secure your pom-pom with it. So look, I did need that length of yarn. I was right. Yeah, that's what I'm going to tell myself. So now that I have the body of the hat done, I'm going to work on making the bear himself. Now, for the brown bear, I used Little Bunny yarn, and that would work perfect here too if I had it in black, but what I have in black is this Yarn Bee Snuggle Up. So they're both size 5 bulky yarn, but I just wanted to note that the Little Bunny will look fantastic in black if you happen to have it. I just didn't have it. You're also going to need a stitch marker, and I'm using a K 6.5 millimeter hook. I'm going to start with a magic circle. So I'm going to wrap this around my fingers like this, and here on the back of my fingers I'm going to take my hook through and grab my yarn up here. Now I'm going to pull my fingers out, and I'm going to put one chain right there to secure my magic circle. And now I want to put 6 single crochets inside the circle. You're going to want to work over both your starting tail of yarn here and the one that's made the loop. So there's 2 pieces here. I'm going to go through the circle. I'm going to pull up a loop. I'm going to yarn over and pull through. And you really have to count because you can't see your stitches at all. They're invisible. But that was 1. I'm going to go through, pull up a loop, yarn over. There's 2. So as you're tightening up this circle, when you got to pull on the tail, your starting tail, and I recommend kind of squishing down your stitches here with your finger, because as you pull, they kind of want to bunch up, and you want them to be flatter so that they look like a circle. So once you have your circle, you pull it tight. You've pulled it tight with your tail end, and now I'm going to try to do 2 single crochets in each of my 6 around. You can't see them so well. You just have to feel and count. I recommend counting out loud. It helps, because if you lose count, it's really hard to figure out where you're at. So I can feel some loops there. I'm going to go under those, pull up a loop. That's my first single crochet in the 2nd row. So I'm going to mark that, because good luck figuring out where it is otherwise. That was 1. Right next to that, I'm going to put 2. So that's an easy one, because you can use the last one as a gauge. And now we're just going to work my way around here. 5 and 6. So you should be about halfway. You can see I'm about halfway. I'm right across from there. So I'm in vaguely the right area, and that's fine, because if you can't tell, nobody else can either. 12. Okay, so I've made it back around. It's looking like a big fuzzy circle. That's the goal. So I'm back to my stitch marker. Now I'm going to do 2 single crochets in my first stitch, and then 1 in the next, and then 2, and then 1, and then 2, and then 1, for a total of 18. I've got 18 stitches in here. It's looking vaguely round, so I'm going to call that good. I mean, I'm pretty proud of myself, to be honest. Now we have 1 more row, just 1 more. You can do it. So we're going to do 2 single crochets into the first one, and then in the next 2, just a single crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, all the way around. You're going to have 24 stitches. All right, we're going in. Woohoo, 24. and back to where I started. Whoa, okay. So that was the hardest part, I promise. Everything else is much easier than that first one because they're all smaller. So you have to do a whole lot less stitches. So I'm going to cut off a longer length of this because I'm going to be attaching it with this yarn. So I'm going to cut myself a length there like that. I am going to try to slip stitch to my first stitch just to make it look more round. So, you know, if you can find your first stitch, well, then you're doing better than me. So I'm going to slip stitch through and then just pull my long length out, and whoa, we're going to call that the bear's head. Yeah, woo! Now for bear's ears, you have to use this yarn that looks really cool, but is also a colossal pain in the butt. But for both the ears and the paws, all you have to do is a magic circle, 6 single crochets, and then slip stitches. So that's it. So that other one, the head, has 4 rows. This just has the one, just 1 row. That's it. So you can do it. We can do it, talk ourselves through it. It's going to be great. All right, so here's my tail. We're going to wrap it around and do a magic circle. On the back side of my fingers, I'm going to stick my hook through. This is the K hook still. I'm going to pull up a loop. I'm going to use 1 chain to secure my loop. And now I just have to do 6 single crochets inside. That's it, I promise, just 6. So pull up a loop, yarn over, that's 1. Count out loud with me, and 2. So cut yourself kind of a longer piece because you're going to attach it with this. Don't pull it through yet though. So take your tail that you started with, pull on that. It'll tighten up. It makes a tiny little circle. Look, it's either a bear ear or a bear paw, whatever you want to call it. They're exactly the same in the pattern. So I'm going to slip stitch to my first one here. I'm going to clean this up a little as I get ready to put it in. Like, I think I'm just going to trim these down because my bear looks a little bit like, you know, he woke up with a hangover. Like, he looks a little frazzled. I might give him a bit of a haircut. But oh, he's going to be so cute. It's worth it to work with the fuzzy yarn. It's a colossal pain, but it's worth it. So now I'm going to make the muzzle for the bear, and I'm going to use a worsted weight yarn for that so that there's a little more definition so you can see it. You know, the fuzz is just really fuzzy. This is Hobby Lobby's I Love This Yarn in Toasted Almond, and I'm going to be using an H5mm hook, and I'm going to start off with a magic circle. I'm going to place, well, first I'm going to do my chain right here to secure it, and now I'm going to do 6 single crochets in the circle, and this is so much easier than doing it with the fuzzy yarn. You can actually see your stitches. Here's 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then I'm going to pull on the little tail to close it. And now I tighten my circle, and now I'm going to do 2 single crochets into each stitch around for a total of 12. So there's my first. I'm going to go under both loops. There we go. Oh, that's just 1 loop. Both loops, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through, and I'm going to mark that because I'm not slip stitching, so it'll be hard to see where your first stitch is unless you mark it. So that's 1. I'm going to put another one in the same stitch. 2. I'm going to unroll some of my yarn. Okay, then another 2 into this stitch. That brings me to 3 and 4, and I'm just going to keep going 2 in each stitch around. I'll take my stitch marker out, and now I'm going to do an increase, so 2 stitches in this one, and then 1, and then 2 in this one, and then 1, 2, 1 all the way around. It gives me a total of 18. So I'm back to the start. I have 18 stitches, and I'm going to slip stitch to this first one in my row, the one I just had marked. I'm going to slip stitch there. I'm going to cut myself a length of yarn long enough to use to sew it on later. And I'm just going to finish it off by pulling that part I just cut. Once again, I've cut a very long string. I just like to make sure I have enough. And that is going to be the muzzle for your bear. So we have to weave in this end and it'll be ready to sew on. This is my bear's muzzle, and I'm going to put the nose on and embroider on the mouth. So what I want to start with here, just so I don't have this little jump from here to here, I'm going to come, this is the front right here, I'm going to come from the back and go up through the middle of that stitch, and then I'm going to go back down to the stitch next to it, just to the right of where I finished, and that makes it look more even. So I'm going to leave that just so I can sew it on later. I'm going to leave that piece of yarn attached. But I like to make this the bottom of the mouth, this part where I just finished it. And I'm going to put the nose in. This is a safety nose, kind of like a safety eye, but you know, a nose. And right underneath this last row, I'm going to just jab that in there and see if, yep, that's where I want to put it, right there. It looks really cute, just like that. So then of course on the back you have to secure the, I don't even know what you call that thing, but that's how you secure it. You just press it down until it pops. You can feel it pop in. I love this yarn in black, and I'm gonna just stitch on the rest of his face mostly. So I'm gonna come up, I think, through the middle here, my middle circle. And I'm gonna pull this through. I'm gonna leave a tail on the back. I like to tie a knot in that so it secures it. I'm gonna go right underneath the nose, and that's gonna make the first part of his face. Try to see if I can get it to, I don't really like that. He's a little angled. He's angled a little bit. I don't like that. Okay. And then I would go down farther and try to find a spot like here. And then I'm going to join it with the bottom of my first stitch. And now I want to make the smile portion of his face. You could just leave it like that. I've seen some like that. I personally like the smiley face. I want him to be happy. And this tends to be kind of trial and error for me. I will try one, I will try to put it in a spot and not really love how it looks, and then pull it out and try again. So we'll see. That one looks pretty good. Do I want him to be a little smilier? Maybe. Let's have him be actually happy, not just the Mona Lisa smile. I want like a big smile. That's cute. And I'm going to go over here and go back to the center. That looks about right. And go down to meet the top of the smile. And there, look at, he's happy. He's a happy little bear. Okay, on the back, I'm gonna just tie my two pieces of yarn together, my tail and part. And you don't want to pull too tight here because it will strain the stitches on the front. It'll pull them inward and you don't want that. And because that's gonna be attached to the other one, I'm not even gonna bother weaving in these ends. I'm just gonna trim them so it leaves a little bit extra like that, and I'm just gonna stitch that underneath. What I'd like to do is sew the little muzzle onto his face. So this is my big fuzzy circle for the bear face, and I am going to pick a spot here on the bottom of his face, and I'm just going to go down through the stitches so you can see the stitch right here. I like to go down through those, and I'm going to come back up right next to that underneath another set of stitches and just go around the circle and stitch his face, his muzzle, onto the rest of his face. So my bear face is done. I'm just going to knot this on the back now that I've tied it. So these are the blue. You have to put this little glitter piece on the back, makes it blue eyes. They're going to pop. And then I'm just going to take a look here and see what I like. I'm not going to affix the back. I'm going to test them both out before I do that. See if I like my placement. Because at this point you can move them, and once you attach it, you cannot move them. Nope, he's lopsided. That's not going to work for me. So we're going to put one eye over here. So now I'm just going to affix these on the back with the washer, we would maybe call this. Press it on. So here's my hat with my big long yarn that I'm going to use for my pom-pom later. I'm going to fold up, first I'm going to make sure my seam is in the back. And when I've got that in the back, I'm going to fold this up where I want it to be. Measure, let's see, a little more than about 2 inches. Seems about right. And then I'm going to affix bear head here, right there, above the brim of my hat. And I think to hold it in place, let's see, I'm going to use some of my red yarn and I'm going to just stitch the brim in place because I want it to stay here. I want it to be here always, to not move. Now I'm going to double check that I've got about 2 inches here. Yep, right about 2-ish. I'm going to come up through the inside here on the side of it. I'm going to leave a tail and then I'm just going to go down on the other side of that row. See, you can't tell that's there at all, but I'm going to knot that right here so that my brim stays, so that I know it's going to be there after I sew on my hat and while I'm sewing on my hat. And then I'm going to do another one on the other side. And here's my bear's face. I want to put the bear right above the brim. I want his chin like touching the brim. And sometimes it helps to use stitch markers and hold this in place while you're moving it, because believe it or not, it is really quite easy to sew this lopsided. I'm going to try it. I'm going to live dangerously and just try to not hold it. But I'm going to go down once again just through the edge stitches and through my hat and pull it out. Oops, there we go. And just go around and affix the whole bear head in place. So I just came up in the next stitch and we're going to do this. Okay, I've gone all the way around. My bear is looking adorable. I'm going to knot this on the back. Now here's my loop and I'm just going to stick my yarn through the loop. Okay, now I'm going to work on the inside of the bear's ears. I'm also using the Hobby Lobby I Love This yarn in Toasted Almond for this one. I'm going to once again do a magic circle. Oops, I can't find my thread. There we go, my yarn. So I'm going to pull up the loop and secure it. And for the inside of the ears, I am going to do the same thing where I place 6 single crochets into my magic circle. That's 2, 3. So now that I've got my 6, I'm going to pull on the tail from the beginning and pull my ring shut. And now I'm going to just slip stitch to the first stitch right here. That helps close your circle. I'm going to cut a length of yarn, not too long, maybe 10 inches. And then I'm going to finish off by pulling that through. And there's the inside of the ear. So I just need to tuck in this little bit of yarn from the start and make another one. You do need to attach the inside of the bear ear with the outside of the bear ear, which is the same process as sewing on the face, where I've once again got a ridiculous amount of yarn, so I'm going to trim that off. Okay, so I'm going to thread my brown onto my needle and then just center it up in the middle of your little black furry blob. However that looks good. I kind of like it here. I'm going to go down through under the 2 stitches and then back up underneath both loops is usually what I aim for to make it secure. And just sew around all of your little inside of the ear. Sew it to the back. So as you're sewing on the ear, if you get some of these little black pieces of fuzz that from the back, just some of your fuzzy yarn, you can just kind of pull it out. I wasn't very gentle with it, but I definitely pulled it out. And now this is done. I'm just going to knot it on the back like I did with the other thing, the muzzle. So I'm going to make a stitch and just knot it, weave it my ends under a little bit here so that they don't come undone. But you are attaching the back of this to the bear head or to the hat, so you're not going to see it anyway. So I leave a little bit of a tail just so it doesn't pull out on me. And after you get both ears done like that, you're going to stitch them right here onto the hat, however it looks best for you. Like that, you're going to stitch it right next to the head. One here, and then one just on the opposite side. So I've got the ears on, and I just want to say again that I think this needs some trimming along the way. Like, he's got kind of a unibrow, which I don't really love. So I'm just going to trim that down, not cutting the thread inside that's holding it, the actual yarn, just the fuzz. You know, kind of give him like cleaned up bear sort of look, because I think it's cuter that way. Got a little fuzzy paw here, and I'm going to embroider on some claws. And I'm going to use brown just because I think you'll see it better. I thought about using red, but then it kind of looks like you just mauled someone, so that seemed like a bad idea. So I'm just going to decide which side I want to be, you know, the bottom. Yeah, this will work, I guess. There's really no right or wrong to that, obviously. So I'm just going to kind of come up through the middle and leave a tail at the back. Gotta be able to pull one through and not the other. Okay, there we go. And just come down and make a little line. Like, there's his little claw. And then I'm gonna come a little to the left of that and somehow stab my needle through all this fuzzy fuzz and make another little line about the same size as the first, hopefully. See, I pulled a little tight and I tightened this one, which I don't want to do. And then just move over a little to the left again and do a third little claw. What I'm going to do though is place them where I want them, kind of get a good look at them. Now, if you're attaching the heart, which I'm not going to do with this one because you wouldn't even see it, but if you do that, you obviously want to place your little paws so it looks like he's holding it. This one, if you're not doing the heart, you can space them a little bit farther apart. I like to just eyeball where I'm going to put them and then clip them in place with some stitch markers and stitch them on.
All that's left to do is attach a heart if you want to add a little bit more love, and add a pom-pom. Happy crafting!